I am happy to see you all. We are talking tonight about sorting and geometry and how those two play into each other. I'm going to give you some helpful tips on that and hopefully increase the math vocabulary, because so much of what happens in geometry is vocabulary related, right? So I was just working with a group of fourth grade teachers, and the comment one of them said was, I usually just teach like the word, the definition, and then I say like, now go do the workbook. And so we were talking about how much it's difficult or how hard it is for students to retain that, to be able to apply it to actual geometry skills. And it feels like we're just trying to memorize, but there's so much vocabulary there. So some of the activities I had given this particular group of teachers, they felt like students were really engaging in the geometry so much more than they had in the past. So I wanted to share a couple of those strategies with you tonight. If you're watching live tonight, would you please let me know who you are, where you're at, where you're teaching from, and what you are teaching in geometry, either coming up, or maybe you're just now teaching, or you just passed up teaching, but tell me where you're at in reference to possible geometry skills. It's generally about this time of year that everyone is entering in some sort of geometry land. So I thought tonight might be a good way for us to discuss that. So as we look here, I'm going to pull up a couple of different slide decks for us. And let's see here. I'm going to share our screen. I'm going to share a couple ways that we can do this. So let's look at this one first. Okay, so these are slide decks that I have in our Math Genius Squad. This one that I'm starting with right now is a fourth grade example. And I just want to give you some background information here. Okay, so here's quadrilaterals. We're talking about, hey, do you remember what quadrilaterals are? What are quadrilaterals? Let's draw some quadrilaterals. Kids are talking about adjacent and opposite. New vocabulary. Okay. Then they're talking about the different types of shapes, the quadrilateral, the parallelogram, the rectangle, the rhombus, the square, the trapezoid. Well, we're speaking of those shapes also in third grade, also in second grade. But how many of you, even as adults, sometimes forget the difference between a rhombus and a trapezoid? It's just not something we use regularly. And yet our students have to interact with this content regularly in elementary school so that it helps them with advanced geometry concepts, like finding area of irregular shapes rather than just rectilinear figures, which is what we do in the lower grades. Okay, all of this does build into skills that students are going to need in higher level math. So the point of that is that we need to have a constant review of what the vocabulary is, but then we need to apply it. Okay, so here I have some things that are helping our squad members think about what the name of it is. Let's give some pictures of it. And now let's define it and come up with some attributes. And if you come up with some attributes, I want you to anchor it on an anchor chart. Okay, so when I put it on an anchor chart, I don't make a really pretty anchor chart before the unit starts and then hang it up on my wall. Okay, that's called decoration. I need it to be an interactive anchor chart. Interactive anchor charts are ones that are created with the class, and then they are repeatedly pointed to, interacted with. We're going to use those anchors over and over and over again. Okay, so let's just say that we've introduced parallelogram. We've talked about what a parallelogram is. We've listed attributes of parallelogram. Well, now I want students to engage with parallelograms. Okay, so one of the ways that we can do that is through sorts, taking shapes and deciding, is this a parallelogram or is this not? Now, whether you're in fourth grade and you're doing it with something like parallelograms, or maybe it's lines, segments, rays, and we're going to do it with angles. Is this a right triangle, an isosceles triangle, a scalene triangle? We're going to do it with, you name it, we're going to be sorting like you can't believe in both fourth and fifth grade specifically. But look at what happens even in kindergarten. Okay, so even in kindergarten, we're talking about, okay, let's sort. Is it a flat or is it a solid? Okay, and then once we sort it, then we're going to compare it, like how many were flat, how many were solid, which one has more. Okay, we're going to do the same thing in first grade, comparing it back to the comparison bars. Right? So either way, no matter which grade you're in, there's going to be things that we're trying to decide, well, is this that or is it not? But we're not going to stop with yes, no, yes, right? We're not just going to say, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Okay, actually, no, right? I'm not doing that. In fact, my rule is this: if you sort it, you must defend it. Okay, so I do a lot of trainings right now with our Math Genius Squad members where their districts and I work together. So we plan out each unit together with all the grade level teachers. We talk about the most important things. And this topic just continues to come up in our groups of the importance of the non-example, but using precise vocabulary to defend why something doesn't go there. So I have my anchor chart now with all my important points about what a parallelogram is. Okay, now I have to decide, well, if this is a parallelogram and I say yes, I don't get to place it here unless I can defend it. Why does it go there? Okay, so I'm going to say, well, it goes there, and I'm going to start listing off the attributes of this particular shape that makes it a parallelogram. Well, it's a four-sided figure, which also makes it a quadrilateral, but it happens to have two sets of parallel sides. And I know that parallel means those lines are never going to touch. It's a parallelogram. Okay, I know this is a parallelogram because, and I'm going to list off the attributes. Now, when your students get to this, I'm like, I just told you why it's a parallelogram. I'm going to say, great, you can tell me again, right? Because the more that they say it, the more they're internalizing what it is. Well, here's another example. This is not a parallelogram. Well, I don't get to sort it unless I can defend it. It's not a parallelogram because this one has two sides that are perpendicular. Okay, instead of having two sets of sides that are parallel, in fact, it has two sets of sides that are perpendicular. Those sides are not parallel. I can list all of the reasons why or why not. Okay, so look at something like this. Is it a square? Yes or no? Okay, well, I don't just get to say yes. Okay, or no in this example, right? No, because there's no square corners. There are no right angles. There are no 90-degree angles. Say it another way. What's another way you could say it? I would say that this is a rhombus, okay, because it has four equal sides, but it's not a square because it doesn't have four 90-degree angles. Therefore, it's not a square, okay? Because my head, my eyes can see that it's not a square, but using precise vocabulary is able to integrate those attributes, make the activity way more engaging. And then students, I have a general philosophy that if it's painful, it's permanent. So when they have to say this over and over and over again for every shape, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm tired of this. Right. Well, now you're not going to forget it because you've done it so many times that language now is embedded because you're having to defend it with all of the things you're doing. Same thing here. Okay. Is this a sphere or not a sphere? And kids are like, it's not a sphere. Well, why? Okay. Well, it's not a sphere because it has straight sides and a sphere does not have straight sides. Good idea. What else do we know? Well, it's not a sphere because this can stack and spheres can't stack. Good idea. How else do you know it's not a sphere? It's not a sphere because it has, and we can talk about faces and corners and edges, right? There's so many different things we can talk about that's utilizing that vocabulary that makes it much more clear what something is versus just putting it up on a board and then saying, now fill in all the workbook pages. Totally different. Okay, I'm engaging with it in a different way. So I want to show you one other thing here. As I pull up, I did a presentation for Build Math Minds, if you're familiar with that site. And back in February, I know some of you attended that. If you are, I'm just pulling up the right deck here. If you are a Math Genius Squad member, don't forget that all of the different trainings that I do nationwide, like, for all the summits and virtual summits and national conferences and whatnot, I put those recordings in your Math Genius Squad area under recorded trainings. You get access to all of them as a part of your membership. So if you want to go see this full presentation, go check it out. It's called Every Voice Every Day is the name of the presentation. And I'll share all sorts of great math talk tips with you. So again, Math Genius Squad members, don't forget that's a bonus in the squad is that you get all of these extra trainings that you just get access to whenever you want to go check them out. All right, so take a look at this. Here's another way you can do that. So let's just say in this example, we're talking about triangles. Like, is it a triangle? Is it not a triangle? Well, I want you to notice that I'm not giving kids all the same type of triangle. Okay, even our kinders are pretty darn good at identifying a triangle when it's an equilateral triangle with the point at the top. Okay, so if I have a triangle like this, they're like, oh yeah, that's a triangle. But as soon as I rotate it, as soon as I change the angles on it, all of a sudden they're like, nope, not a triangle. But that's only because I'm exposing them to a variety of types of triangles, and I want them to rely on their measurable attributes. Okay, so there's going to be things like, well, that one's big and that one's small. Okay, that's not a measurable attribute when we talk about geometry. Well, that one's green, that one's blue, not a measurable attribute. What is something we can measure every time? And one of the things is we can measure, like we can count the number of corners. We can count the number of sides. Okay, those are measurable attributes. So if we say that a triangle has 3 corners and 3 sides, if we're at the basic level of kinder, okay, now I'm going to increase this as I get up through the grades, and we keep adding the types of ways that we can define shapes by various attributes. from the area and the perimeter to the size of the angles, okay, all to the way that we can use that shape to compose other shapes, okay, all of those things are going to come into play. But notice that this particular slide here is showing more of, I want students to defend what they know. It's not letting me go to that side, but they need some more vocabulary. So I'm like, hey, turn and tell your neighbor what you know about this shape. And they're saying things, but maybe I have a lot of students that still need that language, or they need, let me actually stop that. Here we go. Or they need, sorry about that. They need the vocabulary help. Okay. So they need some frames to help them out. So this says use sides, corners, angles, closed figure. Now defend to your neighbor how you know this is a triangle. And I want you to use as many of these words as you can. Okay. Then we're going to do it another one. So sometimes if I can just list vocabulary words out on the slide or on my whiteboard, and then I'm really pushing students to defend what they know about that shape using those vocabulary words, and then even proving it, like outline, red all of the sides. I want you to put blue on each one of the corners. I want you to write whatever the case may be. I'm trying to get them to make sure that they can use the vocabulary, they know how to apply it, and they're saying, of course, the right things there. So again, my friends, this strategy is called, if you sort it, you defend it, right? So sorting more in our shapes is going to help. And then anytime that we are identifying or naming something, when there's that much vocabulary involved, we're going to make sure that students can defend it using a list of attributes. What's going to help them when we anchor the list, so everyone can see it and we continually refer back to it, that's going to help us put our best foot forward. Okay, so I hope that was helpful tonight. Would you put something in the chat? Let me know that you just saw this, that you're going to try it, that you do try it. Maybe you're a Match Genius Squad member and you get all those sorts. I make them all for you in slides, and I also make them in Jamboards and printable versions, so that it still matches the math expressions lessons, but we're making kids do more with it. Okay, if you're not a Math Genius Squad member, you can always cut up your workbook pages, cut up all those shapes and sort from there. All of those work just fine. All right, friends, share something in the comments that worked for you. Let me know you saw this. I'm glad that you are here tonight. Thanks for watching. Happy Math Crush Monday. Let me know what you'd like for us to talk about next week, and we'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.